Maybe they let Hoka be the Gen Z fashion brand. They make sense for Zendaya. They stay away from the precision Swissness, Omega, the Rolex of running shoes, and they let Hoka be the Prada Gucci of running shoes. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
How's it going, my friend?
Really good, really good. I'm glad we finally made the time to do this.
Right. It's been a while going. Been a while. You've been talking about this for the better part of, let's say, 10 months. You finally broke me.
Exactly. But yeah, and you just got back from vacation. Where were you again?
Aruba. If you've ever been, highly recommend. This isn't an ad for Aruba, but we're happy to take commercial opportunities. So yeah, Aruba, beautiful island.
Nice. And then you're also in the middle of prepping one of the companies that you're investing in for sale, yeah?
Yep, we are. It's an Australian company, AI first company in HR tech. I never thought I'd be involved in HR, but HR tech. So we are prepping them for a bit of a North America push and possibly some acquisitions in the near future as well.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
It is.
I don't know if I'm doing anything as exciting as that.
Oh, I don't know, Ian. You're always doing exciting things.
Well, I just got appointed to the board of Ontario Genomics.
Congrats.
So way in over my head on that. But anyways, I'm excited to get to this. So what this is our inaugural episode of Unsolicited Biz Advice. One company, one episode. The unfiltered strategic advice they should be paying millions for, delivered free, whether they want it or not.
Ian, I got to ask you, who are you running through the gauntlet today?
Well, actually, this was your choice, and it was a really difficult one because I thought we would start with, some companies that were really in trouble. But instead of starting with something easy, we started with something incredibly hard. We're starting with On Running today.
One of my favorite brands.
Yeah, one of my favorite brands as well. Actually, I have a couple of pairs. I know I didn't wear them today, of course, because that would have made sense.
Yeah.
But but they are one of my favorite brands. And On Running, for those of you who don't know, is actually this brand. I'm going to show this. These are my notes, but I'm going to show the brand here because you probably don't know that's On Running. I have a lot of friends who I had spoken to, and I said, I'm going to do this podcast with Steve Mast, and they said, "That's great. Why Steve?" And I said,
"Who's Steve?
Why Steve?" But they didn't know what On Running was. And I had to explain to them. I was like, it's that logo where the O kind of looks like an upside down Q. And they're like, "Oh, I love those shoes." And so I think that kind of leads nicely into our discussion today.
I know you're going to cover some facts and figures and some behind the scenes of how On has had this incredible rise to not really, they're considered a challenger brand, but I would actually consider them like a formidable foe to the big guys, which is probably Nike really. But I got a little did you know, Ian?
All right.
So you know how On created the cloud technology? They call it cloud tech.
No.
So the founder, who was a marathon runner, him and some of his other founders of the organization, they started playing around with running shoes and a garden hose. So they clipped up a garden hose and glued the pieces to the bottom of the running shoes. And one of the guys walking around goes, "It's like I'm walking on clouds." So hence Cloud Tech was born. So it was really formed from like a simple kind of innovation to make these runner shoes better, right? So, but anyway, why don't we take us through some of the facts and figures and behind the scenes?
Oh, I love that. That's incredibly innovative. Let's talk a little bit about On. So 34% revenue growth in 2025. That's the projected for the end of the year. Significantly outpacing industry leaders Nike and Adidas. Market opportunity. They're about 2% of the global share of the running shoe market, but 9% in the running category specifically. A total market of about $180 billion. So we're talking about a fast-growing company in a big growing market. Retail expansion. They've got 37 stores, growing to 100 plus with 20 to 25 annual additions planned, and shifting to higher margin direct-to-consumer model. They've got innovation. They've got their cloud tech, which was, I guess, started as the garden hose.
Yeah.
But they've also got this light spray technology.
Yeah.
They can actually spray an entire shoe.
And there was I can't remember her name, but there was a woman marathon runner who just won a marathon wearing those spray-on shoes.
The spray-on shoes. So that's incredible, the spray-on shoe technology. And then in terms of their financial strength, they're about 62.5% gross margins for their 2025 target. So growing company, doing everything. It seems like they're doing everything right. Direct to consumer. They're expanding aggressively into Asia Pacific. I didn't actually mention that yet, but they've got some leading edge technology, the cloud tech, the light spray, the 2% global market. So lots of room to grow in terms of their market share, and 34% revenue growth.
Isn't that slowed?
Yeah. At one point, it was over 70%.
Yeah, I don't know.
For a number of years.
The first time you showed me that stat, I was blown away. And then who wouldn't kill for 34%? So the fact that they went from 70 to 34 and the analysts are concerned about their sort of lacking, I mean, like 34%, that is insane.
Well, particularly so they just reported Q3. Their Q3 revenue, $994 million US. They report in Swiss francs. So converted to American dollars, about 994 million, and they beat expectations. Their expectations was 960 million.
Wow.
And their stock performance is up about 9% as of November 12th, and trading at $42.50 a share. So not an easy company to talk about and tell them what to do.
Lots of positive things. But I'm sure we can find something to give them some advice on.
Well, I think it leads back, if we're going to go there right away, I think it leads back to what we were talking about in terms of what can a company that's doing everything right do? But it seems like they're making all of these achievements without having, in my opinion, a particularly strong consumer brand, because the shoe looks awesome.
Yep. The
silhouette looks amazing. People are wearing it. People are buying it, but they don't actually know what it is.
Yeah, one of the things was really interesting. My first exposure, as you know, I like to run and do various different sports, but my first exposure to the On brand wasn't actually as a running shoe. So we were working with healthcare providers, and we were in a typical boardroom with doctors and nurses and talking about the project we were working on. And at the end of the meeting, we're getting up and we're saying, talk soon, next steps, those kinds of things. And I noticed that every one of the doctors and nurses were wearing this unusual running shoe. And I asked one of the nurses, I said, what is this running shoe? And he says, it's the only thing we wear, right? So that and Hoka apparently are the two that kind of goes back and forth. And I'm like, really? He says, yeah, every doctor and nurse, they've gone to these shoes. So that was my first exposure. And then a good friend of mine that I run with as well, he came out wearing these shoes as well. And something I didn't realize too, they're one of the first, what I would call kind of apparel brands that experimented with subscription service early on in the business, where they were actually saying, hey, subscribe to 4 pairs of running shoes a year and you get a super discount. Now I think they've discontinued that, but I love that in terms of innovation. I thought it was really smart. I'd love to see them bring that back in some way as well, because I think that's a huge differentiator in terms of things they're doing. So, what's interesting is this idea of healthcare professionals. And then you start noticing the trends inside of boardrooms now, or executives where, the fashion isn't to wear leather, loafers anymore. It's wearing running shoes, right? So there's this huge market for that. But they also have achieved a lot of innovation on the track as well. So I think that's the area they got to start thinking about how they compete with a Nike, because Nike really owns athletics. It really does. But you could argue they're owning sort of performance, but maybe performance in a different space. Because one of the doctors had mentioned to me, because I just kept sort of asking about this On question, and they were like, maybe you should go work for these guys. But one of the things that I found really interesting was the response was the reason we wear it is because we have to operate at a high performance. And these are considered like high performance shoes. I thought that was a great way to sort of connect the dots with that.
I mean, look, I'm not a runner. You know this, Steve.
Come on, Ian.
Yeah, I know. I look like I run marathons, but no, surprisingly, no. But I wear On running shoes because they look kind of cool. And I feel like, I'm not going to wear those space age Nikes, the ones that have multiple colors and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm no sneakerhead. I'm 50 years old.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to look overly cool. I kind of want to look like, current enough that I'm not embarrassing. That's kind of like my sweet spot for style. So I chose On just because I thought they looked good. And they were actually really comfortable. And so I agree with you. Like, they've leaned heavily into the athletics, which they should do when they were started by marathon runners. And but I don't know if that's necessarily like the whole story there. And I think that there's a market of people who Nikes are almost like, I feel like I'm almost like too old for like nice Nikes. You know what I mean?
I think the idea of a trend like beyond the track.
Right.
I think that's where if you look at, and again, part of this is pandemic driven as well, where everybody went to like a heavy casual sort of wear. But this idea of being beyond the track, but still wanting to perform at a high level, right? I think that's really interesting. The other part of it too is, and I sort of dug into this a little bit more, it's like this idea that they could own On other categories. Like, let Nike own the athletic world, right? What if On started owning other categories beyond like healthcare or beyond sort of the executives or consultants wearing fancy, funky shoes? What if they partnered with like a NASA or something like that and owned the moon? Or, I mean, that's a really kind of whacked out, crazy idea, but started owning other categories beyond just athletics. Don't get me wrong. I still think they need to be like a strong shoe for athletic performance.
Yeah.
But if they start thinking about, they're about performance and about human performance, because I think the one thing with On that probably worries me, and I think we're probably maybe jumping a little bit ahead in some of the things we want to talk about, but I think the one thing that worries me is like Nike has gone past just the apparel, just the running shoe.
Yeah.
They've created effectively a calling, right? The Just Do It is effectively a calling. Now, most of those ads had people crying in it or things like that, which is maybe not, depending on what you think about ad effectiveness. But the great thing about On is they really probably have to look for how they can own something that's more of a calling. And I'm not sure they can rely 100% on as much as I love the cloud tech, I think that's quite smart, but let's face it, that can be replicated nowadays pretty quickly, or at least something similar. The spray-on thing, super smart. I think the spray-on thing could spark things like micro factories, which it could appear in some of the retail stores. So there's so many different things they could do with that. I'm not sure you could draw a moat around that. I don't know what your thought is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think really the play for them is about brand building because they're doing all the operational things right. They're doing the expansion. They're doing all the things to look at, adjacent markets. They're doing all of that. They're doing the innovation, but they don't have the brand strength that the existing players have. They've got to lean heavily into brand. And, they're competing head to head with, Nike's got a 27% market share. They've got a 2% market share. So when
what's the marketing spend? Do you have that of Nike?
Yeah, I do have that. Their marketing spend is more than On's total revenue. Yeah, so we're talking about a difference of billions of dollars in terms of their marketing spend. 1%.
You just can't compete with that.
You can't compete head to head. You can't be the same.
Yeah.
So they can't, like if you look at the Nike website, it's LeBron James sweating and hunched over, and he's pushed himself as far as he can go.
Yeah.
Right. And that, I think Nike owns that positioning territory.
Yeah.
Whereas I think smartly, although I don't know if they lean into it enough, in my opinion, On has gone with Roger Federer.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, Roger Federer is kind of like the James Bond of athletes. You know what I mean? Like his hair always looks perfect, even after he's played a full game of tennis. And so I think they lean into that.
Your hair is going to look perfect after this podcast.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm no Roger Federer, but my point is, that they lean into that. So go be less, push yourself to your limit, be more the Roger Federer, they're a Swiss company, lean into that Swiss angle. I think they should be positioning their brand almost more like a watch brand does. Like, look at what Omega is doing, look at what Rolex is doing.
Yeah.
Be refined, be precise.
Yeah.
And I think that is an ownable space. And to your point about going after other markets, like that leads into new things. Now, everyone's in golf, Nike's in golf.
Mm-hmm.
But what else are those sort of precision sports, like?
Well, it's interesting that the Roger Federer, I don't know if they strategically did this or was something that kind of fell into, but if you compare, and by the way, I'm not a tennis guy, but if you compare like a Pete Sampras, right, who was a power player, like he redefined the game of tennis because his serves just overpowered their opponents. Roger Federer was a precision guy. He wasn't the fastest guy, but he was a precision guy. He understood that the game was changing, and if he could just hit the lines and put that ball exactly, and so that's why like the marriage of that makes a lot of sense. I don't quite get, maybe you got a perspective, I don't quite get the Zendaya the sponsorship with her and the connection with her. And I think they have a number. So I think they're exploring other options and what they're trying to do, and they're trying to be trendy. But what I also feel too is really, if you think of who's wearing On, it's not younger.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not a Gen Z hot brand.
It's not.
Yeah.
But I feel like they're, maybe the Roger Federer fits into kind of our age category because we've grown up with that.
Mm-hmm.
But some of these other, and maybe they're trying to move into that demographic more. But I'm like, but they're not the ones that have the real spending power. And I think they're actually trying to get out of where they actually probably fit best, which may be the 30-something, the 40-something, the 50-somethings, right? I think that's okay to be in that category. And I find this going head to head with a major athletic brand like Nike could be a misstep. Because again, to your point about the market spend, they just cannot outspend their way through that to
so I found that number. Nike's $4.7 billion marketing spend in for the fiscal year 2025, with about 10% of revenues.
Yeah.
So sorry about that.
So I wonder though, if you kind of think back around, like what does On have as their key assets, right? So we've talked about a lot of things around, it is a performance brand. Like they've proven that. They have a beautiful design. I refer to it as, it's the silhouette. It's unique. Even a Hoka can't sort of compete with that. They try to, but they can't. Even Nike's come out with sort of similar types of, but the silhouette is unique and distinct, right? And so I think that's something that's very powerful as well. And then the other thing too is, and I think this is really interesting as well, is like they don't consider themselves a luxury brand. I found this quite shocking. I was listening to an interview from one of the founders and the CEO, and he was talking about, no, we're not in the luxury category. We're in the premium category. And I'm like, what's the difference between premium and luxury, right? And there is a difference, right? And I feel a little bit that is that a no, like a no man's land? Is that a place where nobody really, it's like in business, right? You always want to, like either we're going to go up market or down market. Like if you sit in this middle ground, you're kind of nowhere. And I wonder if calling themselves a premium brand, that feels like they're a little bit of a middle and nowhere, right? So performance, I get it. The silhouette's beautiful, but this idea of where they're going after the market, I'd be curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I understand why they don't want to say luxury. They don't want to be against, Prada and Gucci and Boss. So I think maybe that's why they're defining it that way. But I agree. But they need to maintain that price premium, and they're not. To your point, they're not going to necessarily maintain that price premium. Zendaya feels like a luxury play,
totally,
right?
Yeah,
and
other people that she supports and promotes are luxury brands as well,
right? So
I would argue Federer is as well, except for Federer has the. You didn't use the word, by the way. Right. Say the word, the Swissness. I love that. I think that's brilliant. I think
I think they need to lead into
I love
their
that.
Swissness. But also, they've got, like you said, they've got Cloud Tech, they've got brand shoes, but Nike's doing a ton of things too. They've got, heat focused fits with, inflatable jackets for Team USA. They've got 100% recyclable materials, enhanced sweat wicking technology. They've got neuroscience based shoes with special foam nubs designed for pre and post game use. They're even doing like bionic shoes. They've got these e-bike free bionic looking sneaker with detachable mechanized arm designed to lightly propel each step. I mean, we talk about they're outspending them billions of dollars on marketing. They're also going to outspend them billions of dollars in innovation. And so if they don't establish the brand now, they're going to be in this arms race that they just can't win.
So here's just one thing to kind of throw out around, and I know we're going to get into a little bit in the summary at the end around what we think they should do. And we both have our different perspectives about that. But one of the things I was thinking about was, what if the challenger brands linked arms and went straight at Nike? Right. So let's just take like Hoka and On. What if they merged and became one organization? Now, again, I have no idea what their cultures are like, or kind of strategic approaches for the future and those kinds of things. But just as challenger brands, and we've seen this in other industries where you have a number of challenger brands decide to either find some strategic alliance, or they just acquire each other, or maybe some kind of PE rolls them up and brings them all together and says, okay, we're going to go after this. I feel like that's a possibility. Difficult to do, challenging to do, but also then there's the flip side of it. It's like, maybe On just wants to be a challenger brand, and maybe it wants to go open. I think you mentioned too, like they're opening up the APAC market, particularly in China. Maybe lean into that and just be focused on that. You've got a lot of consumers in that market, and just stay away from the North American market. Don't even worry about it. You're in there, you're doing your thing. Why not open up that market? So I'd be curious what you think about the idea of the merger acquisition idea.
Well, it pains me to say this because I want to be the one to come up with a smart idea, Steve, but I actually think that's actually really smart, because to your point earlier about luxury versus premium.
Yeah.
Maybe they let Hoka be the Gen Z fashion brand. They make sense for Zendaya.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they stay away from the precision Swissness.
Yeah.
Right. And they let On be the Omega, the Rolex of running shoes. Mm-hmm. And they let Hoka be the Prada Gucci of running shoes. Mm-hmm. And they combine forces. They actually have scale now to compete with Adidas and Nike.
Yeah. Also, shared innovation as well. Like to your point earlier about it's difficult to out-innovate a Nike. The other thing too, with it, just touching on that innovation cycle as well. You and I are both, developed products and been in those cycles as well. You can have a lot of things you're listing out and you're doing and those things, but are they actually selling? Is consumers actually buying these things, or actually having an effect? I would argue, I think Nike is stumbling a little bit in that category. I mean, Nike, especially with, their partnership with RGA years ago, where RGA was developing a lot of really innovative things like, the Apple Watch Nike Plus thing. I mean, all of that, and it's going back a few years, but it's hard for me to think of really strong innovations. You mentioned a bunch of things that Nikes are doing, but are these actually translating into actual dollars and cents versus now the spray-on thing that On is doing? I struggle with. I think their price point is like $300 or $360 or something like that.
Right.
That is not even a premium price point anymore, right? So, and yes, they're saying it's for elite athletes, and yes, if you get into micro factories or micro retail and those kinds of things, and very personalized on that spray-on piece of it. But I'm actually a big fan of On being really focused and intentional on their innovations and product cycle, versus Nike feels scattered, and it feels like they're trying a bunch of different things. Now, I know they just brought in a new CEO to kind of, get their market dominance back. Well, they have their market dominance. It's just, I think they want to get some solid direction on where they're going again, which is smart. But I like the stay focused. Again, I'd really like to hear your opinion on this, because you built a very, very successful company and successful products, but you guys remain very focused. And I think I did the same thing as well.
Well, I think part of positioning is, you know, you don't want to be exclusionary, but at the same time, it's kind of what you're not as well. It's not just about what you are, it's also about what you're not. And I think that's why I like the Hoka play, actually.
Yeah.
Damn, I wish I thought of that. But anyways, I like the Hoka play because you can't be both for, you know, Gen X baby boomers and Gen Z effectively, in my opinion.
Agreed.
And I think
it's difficult unless you have scale.
Yeah, like, and then you become Nike, and then you begin to dilute your value. So I think, you know, established brands bring it together. Hoka plus On. By the way, they had almost complete years of their growth for a number of years, and just recently On has pulled ahead. So it's just like sort of like the last couple of years that On is actually really.
Is there anything that pointed in the data why? Market, regions, innovate, like, was there anything that pointed toward?
I didn't see any analysts like explanations for why that was. It's just sort of like On has done a better job delivering, and I think operationally they've been more effective in terms of like expansion. So I think partly it's the market expansion piece, but they seem to be outgrowing Hoka at the moment significantly, and they weren't for a very long time. They were just neck and neck. And so I really like that play. And then I also think, I mean, let's look ahead. So to your point, what's next in the category? So is it going to be bionic shoes? Is it going to be spray-on shoes? Like, people aren't going to stop wearing shoes.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you look at, and again, this is, you know, sort of a tough question to ask, because I think the apparel, forget the athletic part of it, just the whole apparel space, you know, it's changing quickly. And a lot of it's because of technology, and consumers are fickle. Like, just because they you know, like the On silhouette today, or the Hoka for that matter, you know, they'll change their tune tomorrow, right? So, and we're back to like hush puppies or something. Like, it's, you know, like, consumers are fickle that way. So I do think that the category has to move a little bit away from being purely about athletics, even though I get it. That's why they focus in the category. And they have to get more into what I would sort of kind of categorize as human performance. And I mean, the whole thing where everything is becoming more technology, as you and I both know, AI is obviously in the conversation all the time for organizations, but everything's becoming so tech. Organizations that move into more of the category that we're more human. We care about the human. So you think of like human performance and productivity. And if they start to move into these other categories of how are they enhancing human performance, I feel like that's an area that they could start winning at. And I look at, if you walk around like a Sports Unlimited, or you walk around, I was literally there yesterday looking for a snowboard for my daughter, and you walk around the apparel, a lot of the apparel is starting to shape this narrative around you want to climb this mountain, you want to win that deal in the boardroom. Like, in the same sports store, you're seeing like winning in the boardroom, but also climbing Mount Everest. Like, you're seeing this kind of like pictures that I'm like, I wish I would have taken a picture of it, because I was like, what is going on here? And I think that's where they're headed, about the fact that they're about inspiring human performance, right? Let's get things done. Let's work together on these things. So I think that's where I think the category should head. Again, I think that's again, if you're trying to own a calling, I have a different sort of perspective of what I think On should do. But what do you think they should do in terms of future?
Well, I think the future, you know, I think the sleep category has been great. Like, you know, the Caspers and all the rest of them.
Yeah.
They've done a great job talking about the problems with sleep.
Yeah.
And everyone's got sleep problems,
Yeah.
you know. But I don't think the shoe category has done a fantastic job about talking about foot problems. And so I looked up some statistics on that. Sorry, that was a lot of S's. 1 in 3 older adults experience foot pain, and studies estimate that up to 87% of seniors have foot conditions that directly affect mobility, stability, and quality of life. And so we say seniors. I know it's like not sexy to target seniors, and I'm not saying this should be like, you know, Three's Company Mr. Roper shoe. I'm not saying that's what this should be, but
I don't know. Those are comfortable shoes.
yeah. But by 2030, every baby boomer today who are aged 61 to 79 will be 65 years or older. And that's 61 million Americans, right? So if you think about, they're going to represent 23% of the population. If you think about 1 in 3 of those people are going to be having foot problems, like major foot pain. These people, they have the money. $300 is not a lot for a shoe. You don't want to make it orthotic. You don't want to make it look like that, that solid white running shoe that like nurses wear. That's not the right look. But I think they could make themselves more mission driven about making people's feet, age gracefully with the rest.
Well, I think, by the way, that's super smart. So we're tied now, 1 for 1. So I think where you're going with that, especially when you think about it, I mean, stability is like one of the numbers. So, when you get older, that's why they're promoting for people that age is to do more like sort of muscle fitness, like, strength training. Versus just, cardio, because like your cardio is your cardio after 50, like it is what it is. You might get a little bit better, but it is what it is. Right. So, but strength is really important because you keep decreasing the strength. And the problem with that is your stability starts to get worse and you have slips and falls. And we all know that's what ends up happening is, like we all probably had a friend or a relative that's elderly and there's a slip and a fall, and it doesn't take long after that if they've had a pretty major fall or a hip problem or whatever, that they typically don't last very long. Like it's just, we need to be able to move. So I think you're onto something where sort of the foot as a sort of a key sort of stability, and that whole thing about the aging or the older people as well. It's so funny because in a little bit of prep for this as well, there was a lot of discussion around that. It's like, it's also becoming a popular shoe for the elderly, right? Because it doesn't look like the Mr. Roper shoe or, it actually looks like a comfortable, cool looking shoe, right? Not that I think like, my parents are looking cool, but they are looking for comfort and they are looking for that stability thing because they want to walk, they want to be active, right? But they're worried about the slip and falls and those kinds of things. So I think you're right.
It was 30% of foot strength. You lose it by the time you're 50.
Is that right?
30% of your foot strength is lost. So it's a real problem. I think they should be talking about it the way they talk about sleep. We should be talking about feet. And I think that could make them mission driven. And I think it could give them an angle. And, nothing brands a company like having a mission that their employees believe in. So that's my sort of takeaway for the future. So do you want to start by bringing it home, or
absolutely. Well, I think we could probably talk about this category for another hour.
Easily.
I'm not sure everybody wants to hear that, but so the thing that I've been thinking a lot, and this is more around what I believe On could own. And part of it has to do with like that calling and that mission. I think the foot piece is really smart. But I think there is a real need to get people moving. And I think this idea of owning movement, there was one of my favorite movies, and I have a very eclectic sort of, but I love that Brad Pitt movie, World War Z. And there's a moment in that movie where Brad Pitt talks about with this family that at the very beginning, it's like movement is life. And it's just that comment of that line keeps sitting with me all the time. And the more I think about it, and especially as I get older, I'm in my 50s, it really is. Like, and I try to be incredibly as active as I can, but I find if I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, as you mentioned, and, we were busy moving around and I felt really good. Not because I was hanging out on a beach and relaxing, but because I was moving. I was playing volleyball. I was swimming all the time. As I was going to the gym with my wife, like we were moving all the time. We were thinking about afterwards, like if we would have counted our steps, I bet we got our steps in for the entire year that year. So, or that week. So I think movement is life. I think they should own movement. I think they could actually start something. I think there could be subcategories around like let's get into like, and feet are a funny thing too. Like it's not like dental. I know there's a lot of, things out there now, but a big smile is one thing, but looking at someone's foot, like, I don't know how many people like want to.
Well, there's some people that really like that.
Well, I know there's lots of other, yeah. I mean, you go on Reddit, there's lots of categories on that, but I think the idea of owning sort of the movement, and I have a kind of more of a tech angle to this too, and I've always been really big at organizations creating like the operating system.
Right.
So like, what if On really developed more like the operating system of movement? So it started to connect all these things together, and even started connecting in maybe their challenger brands. Maybe that's a way that they bring in like a Hoka and these other brands into it together. So not just the technology piece, but also communities and things like that. Like truly be maybe the operating system of the foot. I don't know. That doesn't sound as sexy.
No, I like it. You just sparked an idea for me. So I'm honestly for my
bring it home. Bring it home.
You're done?
I'm done. Bring it home.
So I'm gonna just build on your great ideas so that it sounds like they're my great ideas. That's the secret of my entire career, by the way. So I like the idea of owning movement. But I'm gonna throw precision in there. The Swiss precision.
Yes.
So I'm gonna go with like engineer precision movement at every pace. How's that?
Oh wow.
That's the new angle.
Wow. Is that a little ChatGPT helping you out there?
Maybe. So no, I'm gonna lean in, but I'm gonna go with the Roger Federer. Be the Swiss movement company.
Yeah.
This precision movement.
Yeah.
Be more about precision. Be less about brute force.
Yeah.
Less, more about hitting the line, like you said, instead of like running until you're doubled over.
Yeah.
Make a shoe for older people, or at least position it as it's for everybody.
Yeah.
But focus on that mission of the foot. And when you said the operating system, I thought, there's a lot of step counters. But if we start talking about things like the danger of losing strength in your foot, why not measure, what's the loading on your foot? What's your arch looking like? What's the strength of your foot? I'm sure they can put sensors in shoes to give you that kind of thing.
How much they would appeal to a wide category if they went down this path. Again, it's not as sexy as putting like an athlete running, breaking some super record, or spraying on an athlete shoe, or even the Roger Federer, like, hitting that line to win Wimbledon. Like, it's not as sexy as that. But I got to tell you, they would appeal to a lot of people if it's just like what I sort of immediately envision is, instead of this like amazing, cool ad about these, really awesome people that do these amazing things, I have this vision of like a deer TV spot on nighttime television. So it's like, I wouldn't want to go there, but I do think to be able to own that category. I really like that. And even that step counter, like, why wouldn't that just be built in and be automatic? Like, I don't have to like start something. It's just every time I put the shoes on, you're moving.
Well, think about it. Like, I've got an Aura ring.
Yeah.
And I obsess about the stats around my sleep.
Yeah.
I should, that's because you told me I should.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I wasn't thinking about sleep before everyone was talking about sleep. If you started telling me your foot strength and the loading on your feet and how your feet are aging, is going to matter that much to your mobility and that much to your standard of living. You could sell me on this exact same.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Like, maybe it's getting into that versus, and again, I get it's not that you don't need influencers or, big branded name people to be part of this, but that I think would get a lot of people going, that's the shoe, that's the company, that's the brand I want to be affiliated with. Because that's the other thing. We didn't even get into this so much, but I think one of the things that Nike suffers from is people just aren't loyal to brands anymore like they used to be, right? And so, people switch brands all the time because it is more about, does this fit me personally? They don't really care what the brand is, right? They're happy to switch brands, and it's got to be something that really appeals to them and helps them in their life. So, yeah, love that.
So, bring it all together. Get yourself some scale by merging with Hoka. Let Hoka be the luxury. You be the premium. Focus on the Swissness, the precision. Roger Federer, sailing. We're talking about adjacent spaces. Don't just do golf. Do sailing. And then have a mission. Make your
calling.
Yeah,
I make it
calling for the company.
Build that operating system around the calling. Yeah. Right. Especially on the foot part of it. Brilliant.
All right, I think we've nailed it. We've just fixed a company that doesn't need to be fixed.
Awesome. Well done, Ian.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank
Talk to you next time.
Yep.
We just gave you free advice on someone else's business. Want expert insights on yours? Dig Insights delivers the consumer research that drives high-stakes innovation for brands like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and hundreds more. Ready to outperform your competition? Visit diginsights.com. Dig Insights. Future proven.
AI adoption starts with people, not technology. This episode is brought to you by 2044. An AI 44 assessment gives you a complete view of AI readiness, delivering a clear roadmap with ROI-focused priorities. Learn more at 2044.co.